I have heard stories about the bride who plunged into a lake clutching her new wedding ring. I've heard stories about the man who found the woman's corpse bobbing just below the water's surface. Heard how he pried the simple gold band off her finger and made his way home. I heard about how he drowned himself in his bathtub, ring on his finger. I read about how the paramedics had to cut his finger off to get the wedding ring. She had the wedding ring. I've heard now she's then drove her an ambulance into the lake. I've heard about how the wicked ring, this simple band of gold, yet simply hauntingly beautiful, the ring that loves the water, it drives people to possess it. I just had to have that ring, even if I had to pry it off the bloated corpse's finger. I'm writing this as a warning to anyone. I'll continue in a bit, but I think I'm gonna go swimming first. I've always had a strange obsession with coffee. I'm not sure why, but I think it's warm feeling of the hot liquid going down my throat and into my stomach. I think it's the fact that it warms me to the bone. Moving on, however, I sat at the table drinking my cup of coffee. God, I love my job, I thought to myself, with a grin on my face and with a coffee in my right hand. I glanced across the table to my friend. If you're not going to drink your coffee, and why did you ask me to make you some? He kept silent, a blank look in his eyes as he stared at me. I shrugged. More for me then. I reached across the table, slid the mug of coffee in front of me, and I took one more long, good sip of my own cup, finishing off in one gulp. I returned the paper in front of me, stretching a few things, while moving on to the cup I had taken from him. I yawned deeply into my sleeve, pausing my writing for only that. I frowned when I looked back up at my friend. David, I think his name was, from what I can recall. I glanced over to the TV in the kitchen, listened to the news anchor. Breaking news, this just in. Yet another body has been found. The body was found late last night flowing into the little river. It had multiple lacerations and it had the word fear with the number 3 carved in where the E was, and his stomach. The police are yet to find out any further information. This has been Action News reporting to you live. I sighed after the newscast had ended, looking over to David a bit tiredly. It appears they found my work, David. Now it's only a matter of time until they find you. I got up, walked over to the lifeless, pale body, and a large, smooth laceration, nearly surgical along the throat area, severed the carotid artery. I peeled his shirt off his body, sliding out a butcher knife from one of those nearby drawers, and then as I slid on my gas mask, I brought the knife up to his stomach and began to carve TH3 into his stomach. His warm blood splattered on my shirt, along with several, as I severed the multiple veins. My gloves had been painted with them when I stabbed the butcher knife into the wood of the table, letting it stick. Adjusting my mask with my gloved hand, and made my way out the back door. I sprinted behind the woods into his home. While reaching for my cell phone, I dialed 911 and thought of a marvelous plan. 911, what's your emergency? I responded in my tired voice. Yes, I'd like to report a murder. Okay, where is this murder taking place, sir? Well, what would the fun be in that? I turned around and whipped the phone towards the house. I wasn't far, so it was only gonna hit the grass in the backyard when I turned around and I ran off through the trees. The next day, I drove by the house. The cops are still there examining the crime scene for who knows for what reason. They'd be looking for me now, but that would just add on to the fun of all this. God, I love my job, I thought to myself as I drove off towards the highway to get out of this place. For now. One school day, a boy named Tom was sitting in class and doing math. It was 6 minutes until after school. He was doing his homework and something caught his eye. His desk was next to the window, and he turned and looked at the grass outside. It looked like a picture. When school was over, he ran to the spot where he saw it. He ran so fast that no one else could grab it. He picked it up and smiled. It had a picture of the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She had a dress with tights on and red shoes, and her hand was formed into a peace sign. She was so beautiful he wanted to meet her. So he ran all over the school and asked anyone if they knew her or ever had even seen her before. But everyone he asked said no. He was devastated. When he was home, he asked his older sister if she knew the girl, but unfortunately, she also said no. It was very late, so Tom walked upstairs, placed a picture on his bedside table, and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, Tom was awakened by a tap on the window. It was like a nail tapping. He got scared, and after the tapping, he heard a giggle. He saw a shadow near his window. So he got out of bed and walked towards his window. He opened it up and followed the giggling. By the time he reached it, it was gone. The next day, he asked his neighbors if they knew her. Everybody said no. When his mother came home, he even asked her if she knew her, and she said no. He went to his room, placed a picture on his desk, and fell asleep. Once again, he was awakened by tapping. He took the picture and followed the giggling this time. He walked across the street, and then suddenly he was hit by a car. He died with the picture in his hand. The driver got out of the car to try and help him, but it was far too late. Suddenly, he saw the picture and picked it up. He saw a cute girl holding up 3 fingers. I'm here to talk about a topic I've taken interest in lately. It never got a lot of media attention, despite how interesting it is. The I Love You murders. They were a series of 5 murders that took place in a large city in Ohio throughout 1962. The first chain of murders took place on January 20th. A woman had been found in an alley in the most sketchy part of town. She had been scalped. Not a single strand of her long dark hair had been left behind, which was definitely a very odd MO. The cause of death was determined to be a stab wound to the back that pierced straight through her heart. The only clue that was left to go on was a note stuffed in her mouth that read, "I love her." Since there wasn't anything else to go on, it turned to a cold case quickly. On March 3rd, the next body was found. A woman had been beaten to death and was sprawled out across an old set of railroad tracks, not too far from downtown. She had been beaten to death and left very disfigured. She had been put up. She definitely had put up a fight in the attempt to get away, though. She was missing nails and her head had been slammed against the track several times, leaving her skull cracked. The disturbing part of this murder is that the fact that her crystal blue eyes had been gouged out while she was still alive. There was a note that was stuffed in her mouth that also read, "I loved her," just like the previous murder. In mid-July, a few teenagers had broken into an abandoned house to drink, but their party had been cut short when they found a body of a woman who had been slaughtered in a back room. Her heart had been literally chiseled from her chest, which was also the cause of death. Yet again, the now infamous note had been left in the mouth of the victim, but still nothing to go on. 4 months later, the police were starting to think that the killer had finally died down, but the wishful thinking had been an immediate halt when the next victim had been found. 2 teenagers had broken into an abandoned factory and found the body whose face had been carved off. She had also been raped and stabbed several times in the abdomen. She had died from the blood loss, but same as always, nothing but a note was left behind. The 5th and final murder took place on December 1st. This murder wasn't like any others, though. The only thing that had been left behind were 2 green eyes, red hair, a heart, and a woman's face. The same unsettling note. In 2007, the killer was finally found, but not exactly caught, so to speak. The now old man had been found dead of natural causes in his home. Months later, while his children were clearing out the old house in the process to put up on the market, they found an old wardrobe with a padlock on it. Thinking it would be filled with nothing more than guns or paperwork, they carelessly cut the lock. Of the 3 of his now fully grown children around, they just stood around in awe at what they had found. A perfectly preserved woman, although it was more like bits and pieces sewn together to make a woman. Taped to the door, the inside of the wardrobe, were pictures that looked of their father in his teenage years was a gorgeous woman about the same age. She had long dark hair and bright blue eyes, just like the woman in front of them. But it didn't exactly look like the same woman. Some features were close, but not dead on. At closer examination, the words, "I love you," were cut into her lips.